Roland and Rafael, please come and join me because we want to hear how cement companies are coping with this, how they've been handling it. And I'll start with Roland and then go into Rafael. Welcome, Roland and Rafael from PPC and CEMEX. So you've got a few thoughts on a slide. I'll come to you in a moment, if I may, Rafael. Roland, what's your reflection on what you've been hearing? How does it match your experiences at PPC?
Well, I think there's a lot that we hear today that matches one-to-one to the experiences that we have. Operational excellence, alternative fuels, a lot of opportunities that we can grasp without major investments, et cetera, et cetera.
Are you feeling under pressure?
I think we've been always feeling under pressure. There's many demands that are being made on companies. We've heard about the investor view, the banking view, etc. One element that we maybe haven't spoken a lot about is the consumer. So operating in countries across the African continent where still a lot of infrastructure needs to be built, we also have to be mindful that the consumer ultimately needs to have a certain amount of awareness. Because if there's two products available on the market, one with a low carbon footprint and one with a higher carbon footprint, and the price difference is 10%, 95% of the people will take the cheaper version. So that awareness that you mentioned is something that needs to go still a lot broader than where we currently stand.
Where is this going, though? Is there a differentiation? We're seeing this in steel at the moment, that clean steel is seen as attractive as part of the product, even if it's slightly more expensive. In other words, if you sell a car which is being made with clean steel, actually that's attractive to customers.
So I think in the countries where we're operating, it is still extremely limited. And I would include a country like South Africa, where you would expect that there would be a certain level of interest in green buildings. And I think we do have an excellent opportunity across many countries that are still developing to actually put in place the right infrastructure. If you look actually in a place like Dubai, wherever you go inside, there is air conditioning running. But the building is also well insulated. I had the pleasure to work in an Asian country where a relatively new building was built, where I was freezing cold. I had to go to the window to warm my hands. And that window was very warm because it wasn't very well insulated. Now, those are, of course, missed opportunities where I think from a whole built environment, that cooperation that was spoken about by various previous speakers is extremely important.
What's your view about the role of government in all of this? Do you feel that as a chill down your back? Or is it something which is benign at the moment compared to the challenge and the enormity of expectation there is now on climate? In other words, government's not really taking enough of a role when they could and should.
Yeah, I find that sometimes a little bit easy to say the government should play a bigger role. We, together with our board, played a United Nations negotiation game where part of the group was United States, part was China, part was developing countries. And we were close to the Third World War in less than 15 minutes, probably, right?
15 or 50?
No, 50. Okay. It took us a little bit, quite decent
World
people.
World War on cement.
World War on, who is going to pay for what? Because if you look at Africa, Africa contributes less than 3% of the global CO2 emissions. So why would companies in Africa have to foot the bill for the mess that was created in Europe and in the United States? Whilst we still, throughout the continent, have to go through an industrialization, a built environment, et cetera, et cetera. So very quickly you get the finger pointing, who's going to foot the bill for this
Who won the war?
We didn't, actually. We didn't start it either.
But how did it shake down? Give us an idea of...
So it does shake down that you get a lot of finger pointing. The developing countries, relatively small, asking the developing world to come up with the funds. I think it was yourself or Ian who referred to the famous 100 billion that was committed in 2008 or 2009. How much of that has actually been spent?
Or pledged.
Or even, exactly. So you do get very quickly those throwaway comments that say, well, you're not doing enough. And on the other hand, that gives you the excuse, and I think it was Amir who mentioned at the start, we haven't done enough because we have just so many excuses that we have been using and can still use if we want to.
Do you feel that you need to reassess the excuses that are being used, even perhaps in your company as well? Is there a radicalization which can happen, given the enormity and the science that there is now on the climate emergency, and the indications since the IPCC reports of February and April that actually things are getting much worse?
We launched our own roadmap about a year ago, formally, and we did that through applying the recommendations of the Task Force for Climate-related Financial Disclosures. So we didn't just look at our carbon intensity, we also looked at what climate change can do to our factories in terms of drought, fires, water, etc. And it is quite insightful that some of our plants are at risk. At the same time, we also have a day-to-day business to run. We have meetings with our investors who are expecting a certain return. And when we presented the plans for decarbonization, which has 27% reduction until 2030, for the next 5 years, we're investing $40 million, which, for many of us in the cement world is not big money. And investors are immediately asking, well, what's the return on that? Is there a fictive CO2 cost that you have associated to this, or is there real money that you're going to generate out of it?
How much are you under pressure from shareholders who want returns now, rather than reassigning cash, reassigning your money, so that you're better prepared, say, by 2030?
If I make an estimated guess, in the investor conversations that we have, 1 in 10, if I'm being positive, will raise the topic. And the rest is, how's your business doing? How can you increase your prices? To Arno's point, the costs are increasing. Where is your cash flow? When is the dividend coming?
Picking up on Alan's point again, it's a question I ask him, but let me ask you as someone who has to run a company, the question about the profound realignment which is needed at a time of intense pressures on climate because of the variables that Anand put on the agenda in his detailed presentation.
I think I'm blessed to work for a company that has been celebrating 130 years. And I think any company that is over a century old has made the right decisions with the long term in mind. So when I say...
Well, we're at a time where there's no precedent at the moment for what we're going through.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do think that when the pressure comes and you get the visible examples that we see every day, it is easier to defend an investment case that says, if we're going to go for, be it waste heat recovery, be it alternative fuels, you get a lot more understanding in your, let's call it the direct sphere of influence, the management team, the board. Ultimately, it's not the investor that is actually making the decisions. It's the investor that, over the long run, gives you the confidence. And that goes back to, I think it was Ahmed who previously said, for as long as you are above average, that you're better than others, it's where you will actually attract the investors to you as well.
All right, well, look, Roland, can we just pause for a moment and go to Rafael? You've got some thoughts, I think, with some slides. So, yeah. Rafael, either from there or wherever you want to do it from. And if you've got questions afterwards, please come back, because we're going to hear from the EBRD and also EPD as well. But Rafael, please.
Do we have the ticket?
I've got it here, yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Are you happy for us to sit in front? Will it hide your slides?
No, I think you're fine. So, real quick, first of all, I'm not the CEO of CEMEX. I'm the CEO of CEMEX UAE. Big difference. But we're here all because we're facing, a challenge that, like you said, unprecedented. And in order for us to be successful, we need a lot of collaboration on all types of levels in every country that we're operating in. So, in CEMEX, we develop our Future in Action program, where we're trying to be one of the leaders in reducing the carbon footprint and try to be net zero by 2050. As everybody knows, the cement industry is about 5 to 8% of all the CO2 emissions across the globe. In order to get to 2050, we're setting 2030 goals to be at 475 kilograms of CO2 per ton of cement around the world, not just one plant. It's all the plants in the CEMEX network, which is a little bit more than 60 plants. Also on the ready-mix side, we're trying to be 165 kilograms of CO2 per cubic meter by 2030. Some operations are already achieving these targets in 2022. So we're moving very well. And all of this is in alignment with SBTI and also with the United Nations Race to Zero campaign. So we're focusing on 4 pillars in the Future in Action program. Sustainable products, which is what I'm going to jump into real quick, decarbonizing our operations, innovation and partnerships, and promoting a green economy. So when it comes to sustainable products, we have launched worldwide a product called Virtua. So it's our first CO2 reduced cement. In the UAE, we've launched Virtua Classic. Why? We haven't gone to Plus or Ultra because it's very challenging. And UAE is one of the countries with the highest clinker factor around the world, standing around 91 to 90%. So just going to Classic, which has a clinker factor of 80%, is having a lot of resistance. We can go directly to Ultra because we have operations across the world that are at Plus or Ultra. But there's some challenges that I will discuss later on. And then on the ready-mix side, we have launched three categories, the Classic, the Plus, and the Ultra Zero. In the UAE, currently, only Classic and a little bit of Plus is being used. Ultra Zero, obviously, there's a higher cost. It's probably about 10% more costly. And right now, that's one of the challenges, balancing, the environmental goals versus your budgets. So just going real quick, what is CEMEX Virtual Cement? So it's a green cement that has a low clinker factor. Normally, we use other raw materials to reduce that clinker factor. And this was developed in Switzerland, but the key advantages is you have a low heat hydration, right? So you might be affected at early strength a little bit, but at 28 and 56, you're going to see a better resistance than the traditional OPC. You also have less water demand, so admixture savings. You have better workability and a reduction in setting time. So those are key advantages. So not only is this good for the environment, but it's good for the contractor, it's good for the person that's placing the material, and it's good for you as a company. And this can be used for all types of elements, whether it be structural or non-structural or mortars and grouts. And if we look at durability, in the chloride permeability, water permeability, and water absorption, this product is superior than OPC. So there's no reason why an industry cannot translate into these CEM2s and CEM4s that we see across the globe. And then when we speaking real quickly about the strength, as you can see here, on the mortar side, you have slightly lower strength, but still way above the requirement. And on the compression strength, you have slightly lower in 1 day and 3 days, and above in 7 and 28. Now, currently in the UAE, this product is having a 689 kilograms per CO2, so it's 16% reduction of CO2 versus the current OPC. Again, right now we're selling probably out of our portfolio, 9% of our portfolio is CEMEX Virtual, when it should be 100%. But in the UAE in particular, we have a lot of challenges with consultants. So this product has been approved by Dubai Municipality. All the technical work has been done, everything, all the analysis have been done and validated, but yet consultants are hesitant to move because they've been doing it a certain way for 10, 20, 30 years. And anything of change, they see it as risk. So not only do we need the cement producers, not only do we need the government, but also we need the developers and the consultants to come along on this ride. Since we launched this in August of last year, we've saved 57,000 tons of CO2 with these products in the UAE, which is equivalent to eliminating 12,469 vehicles on the road. That's the impact that this has. And this is only by using Classic. I mean, we're not even talking about using the other more advanced or highly CO2 reducing products. So real quick, I only have 2 slides left. One of the things that is not talked about enough is concrete pavings. So a country like UAE, before here I was in Egypt, very, very hot countries, right? When it comes to doing concrete pavings, not only can you eliminate 24 to 40% of the light poles that you use to illuminate the parking lots, not only is it safer, in the United States, you rather send your wife to a supermarket with a concrete paving than one with asphalt, because it's very dark and you don't know what here. These are very safe countries, but nevertheless has an impact in safety, has an impact in energy costs. And here, temperature, which is something very, very important, you can save almost 12 degrees Celsius in ambient temperature by using concrete pavings. So you have a lot of construction of villa projects, residential projects, and if they were done in concrete, not only are you having all the impacts from the savings in the CO2 from the raw materials and the solutions that you're providing, but also you have less cooling in your housing. So utility bills go down. So there is a lot of low-hanging fruits that we have at our disposal that we don't need to point the finger at anybody but ourselves, right? We need to push concrete solutions across the, let's say, the value proposition that we provide to projects, and we need to bring the consultants and the government to push harder for these type of solutions. And with that, I finished the presentation.
But, okay, do join us again, Rafael, but do they get what you're saying? Or you talked about essentially a conservatism. What will persuade them that this is a radical, far more cost-effective, far more climate-efficient series of solutions?
I think there's many things that can be done. I think number one, we need to find a way to incentivize developers and consultants.
Have you got a way?
We've spoken to banks and government officials in the different departments and tries to come up with programs for that, especially on the financing side, right? That if they switch their products to more of a greener product, maybe they get a break on interest rates and other perks. So we've had those type of conversations. But for the consultants themselves, which have a lot of power in a country like the UAE, it's not only having the awareness, but it's wanting it. And one of the things that we have seen, unfortunately, is that they move when the government moves. So if, here GGBS is very popular, right? Because it was one way to reduce CO2. But yeah, but that GGBS, you bring it from India and you bring it from Japan. So you still have a carbon footprint to bring it over here. The market moved very quickly to that because Dubai municipality passed Circular 225, and that was basically a mandate. So boom, you got the quick turnaround from the consultants. From what we're seeing, out of every 10 consultants that we speak to, maybe one changes to green products. So we need either stricter policies, we need maybe different circulars promoting greener products, or we need different types of incentives for them.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes more with Roland and Rafael. Does anyone want to come in and check? Yes, can we have the microphone here, please? Anyone else, please? But Roland, have you experienced the same kind of, it's my word, conservative with a small c, conservative understanding of the additional potential? Microphone here, please. Where's the microphone, please? Microphone? Who's got the microphone, please? Knock, knock.
Conservatism.
Overcoming conservatism.
I do think that there is conservatism across the industry, and sometimes for good reasons.
But it's also the consulting and the governments.
Yeah, but you are building. You don't want this building to be too innovative and fall on your head. So there is a reason that certain things need to be tested properly. I'm not disagreeing with anything what Rafael is saying, but I am, mindful of the fact that ultimately the products that we produce ending up in durable constructions with the stress on durable. So a certain conservatism is understandable. In the past, maybe sometimes still in the present, The industry didn't play its role. I think we've got to admit that. I think we've passed that to a very large extent. But I have certain appreciation that we're not getting too innovative with the houses and the bridges that we put together.
Yet we heard from Mahindra, what's happened with LC3, the fact that it started in Switzerland, and look where it's now developing. So not everything, you've got to be cautious for obvious reasons, given that there are buildings which do collapse, but for other reasons.
And I think LC3 is a perfect example of something that is nothing new. So LC3 has been known for years, and that is where the industry, for years, has ignored it because it didn't fit their interest. So that has changed. So LC3 is, for me, it's a proven solution. We have variable projects underway where also you do test. Not every clay turns into LC3. We're learning as we go along. So some of these solutions, they have been out there and pushed back.
Ayoub.
Everything that is being said since the morning proves three things. Everything that has been said since the morning proves three things. One is it's doable. Two is that most of the cement companies know or at least have sufficient knowledge on what should be done. Three, it's the will to do it and some enhancers. These enhancers could be policy, could be incentives, could be the financial sector, could be the developers, but it's doable and it can be done. And we need to find ways to do it rather than find ways of why aren't we doing it. And I think that will solve the problem.
One more contribution here. Just introduce yourself, can you?
Ahmed Zagail, chairman of AQ Co. Governments have pledged targets towards 2030 and 2050. Governments are under pressure now, and they have to transform this pressure downwards to the various sectors of the country. It is evident that they cannot do it alone through initiatives of new energy projects or anything. They have to do it through the different sectors. One of the sectors in Saudi Arabia, that is cement, now is subject to targets, penalties, bonuses on energy efficiency. It's have been given timeline to relinquish liquid fuels. So I'm a firm believer that this cannot be done without government intervention and government pressure. Of course, there are a lot of things that can be done through policy and green construction and so many things. But if the governments do not do this pressure, right now, because of the urgency of this matter, the private sector or the corporations, they will have their time, given the circumstances and the situation, environment around them and so on. They will try to adapt and try to maneuver and so on. But now, of course, there are other things like the financial sector involvement with investment and finance and so on. This could be a lever that can be used by the United Nations, the governments, and so on. So,
thank you.
That's basically.
I regret having to close this in a moment, but let me come back to what, if I remember the numbers on there, Rafael, of Virtua, from 16% to 25% Ultra. So there were 3 different versions.
Correct.
It comes back to what I was discussing with Roland half an hour ago about steel, particularly. 95% don't really want to buy the new stuff because of cost reasons. What kind of judgment are you beginning to make? You've got the Virtua. You've got it in 3 different incarnations, is what I saw there. Do you believe there is a shift taking place or will take place, or are you dealing with essentially conservatism, which is driven by margins and driven by money?
Yeah, so in the first categories, we actually made a decision to launch it at the same price of OPC so that we eliminate that aspect for the customer. They say, oh, it's more expensive, so my budgets are not gonna comply with this product. Yet, we still don't see a lot of traction in that. So yes, I think it does go to conservatism. LC3 is a great solution, but if you cannot go to 80% clinker factor, what makes you think you're going to go to 50 or 40%? And I think also as an industry, we have to be more transparent with our numbers, because a lot of times we're saying, oh, we're achieving 30% or 40% of the product that is being produced. But if I keep a clinker factor 91%, and now I'm starting to do masonry cement in my portfolio 10, 20%, and then GGBS in 20%, then my CO2 impact of everything I'm producing drops dramatically, although my clinker factor is still 91 on the OPC. So we have to be, I think, a little bit more aggressive on these products, and we have to find a way to convince
aggressive, inventive. Is aggressive the right word? I mean, aggressive suggests there's a degree of tension potentially.
I think, personally, it's going to come to a situation where the municipalities are requiring it for the construction codes. Otherwise, I don't feel it's going to take a long time. We're like a big elephant, and,
Right,
and we're trying to move the elephant.
Let me check that with Roland. Actually, that it bottom up is going to start dictating how this is resolved. In other words, the new derivatives of cement.
Yeah, it's actually, I was reflecting when Rafael was saying it, it would be very sad if we have to wait for government intervention to impose it, right? This should be something that we are actually addressing proactively ourselves for our own future generations. Now, having said that, I'm also, I don't think we're naive. But if, on the other hand, I look at the cement industry, when was it, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the dust plumes that were coming out everywhere, that simply is forbidden nowadays. No more dust coming out of your cement plant, finished. Find a solution. So maybe there will be a government regulation that says, look, there will be, you can do it, 480, Mahendra said this morning. So boom, anything above 480 is forbidden. Make it happen. We need to be ahead of that game. We need to be one step further. And I think everything has been said that first 30, 35%, we just need to get it done. This is a wonderful place where we have this conference. We're in front of the Museum of the Future. And I had the opportunity to walk through it, and there is a nice statement there. The future is for those who imagine it, design it, execute it. Now, that first 30% that has been imagined, it has been designed, just get it done. We need to execute. I think that's where the
just get it done. Last word.
Yeah, just to close real quick, I think we can do it without government intervention, but I don't think we will achieve the speed that is required for the change that we want.
And that's not unique to the cement sector either. It's a problem everywhere. Can I thank you, Roland and Rafael, very much indeed. Let's do another hot switch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me invite Yousra El Said from the EBRD to join me. Yeah, okay. Is Yousra here? Yes, you are. Great. Forgive me, I haven't seen you before. Would you like to stand there, or do you want to come here? And we'll have Nasser Ayoub later. So the floor is yours. Are you happy for me to sit here?
That's
or am I going to block
fine.
your slides?
Thank you for that. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure being here, and honestly, it's been quite interesting listening to all the interventions that we had this morning. The message that is loud and clear to me as representing the financing side and the need for further investment is that we're all aligned in our objectives. There needs to be consolidation of stakeholders and proper policy dialogue there. And there needs to be as well a little bit of risk-taking when it comes to the financing side and the availability of financing. Just to put things into perspective, the EBRD has had as part of its core priorities green financing. And since 2006, really, our green financing share has totaled more than 37 billion, I think, in terms of investments deployed across 2,000 projects in the regions where we operate. We have a very long and proud history of green finance and climate action. But the realities of today and the imminent climate crisis, they impose a more aggressive and bold action plan. We have recently announced that we aim to fully align our activities with the goals of the Paris Agreement on climate change by 2023. This is an ambitious journey towards net zero transition, and the terms of our green economy transition approach, GET as we call it, we are already committed to becoming a majority green bank by 2025. Our GET approach, it really builds on more than 2 decades of experience in financing green investments with an initial focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy. However, it is very important to mention that this approach, it does recognize that while all countries will contribute to global goals, the national circumstances will determine the national commitments. And it is critical for the economies in which we invest that they understand that, and because of the diverse starting points of each and every country, they need to prepare their long-term emission strategy and low-carbon roadmaps. Under our new GET approach, we are set to further increase our green financing to more than 50% of our portfolio, and this is going to be a reality very, very soon for us. We intend to do this not just by deploying the necessary funds, but we will be significantly scaling up our policy advice, institutional capacity building for low-carbon and climate-resilient strategies, and we will be promoting and supporting ambitious action in and with the countries and the governments with whom we collaborate. The way this will happen will vary. It will be very different from one country to the other, but we will be supporting our countries as they grow their green ambitions. Just to put things into perspective and looking specifically at the cement sector in particular, we all understand, and I've heard from the experts that we consume, I heard 7%, 5 to 8%. I mean, it is emitting 7 to 8% of global carbon emissions. And I heard as well that there has been endeavors to reduce this, either by clinker substitution or by fuel side measures that have been undertaken. I heard as well that there has been alternatives, green alternatives, sometimes on the experimental side, and sometimes that are on a much more smaller scale. But from our perspective, it is unrealistic to envision that entirely displacing the concrete sector anytime soon will happen. Specifically, that the bulk of the growth will happen in the coming decades in emerging markets where we have less that they have less choices available to them. And the question then becomes, what can be done? How much can be done? As EBRD, we understand the complex process involved in the cement sector. We understand the transformation that is requiring the limestone to be burned in those very powerful furnaces, and we understand the unavoidable resulting release of large quantities of CO2 throughout the production chain. We understand it is a given that the cement will produce emissions, because it is really the basic process. And we understand as well that the efforts needed are big to convince new stakeholders and stakeholders of newer technologies, newer products, and the changes in the markets that are required are as well very difficult, and market adoption is difficult. With this being said, however, we do believe that CO2 mitigation measures, they exist, they are achievable, and they are economically viable and feasible, and technically viable and feasible. And this, if we focus on the 4 main levers, I'm sorry I didn't, I thought I'll have the presentation, but I think...
Is it there, do you think?
I think...
There it is.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I'll have to skip on the...
Have you got the handset?
Yeah, I'll have to skip. So the 4 main levers, really, they rely on investments in resource and energy efficiency for the plants. They rely on supporting the use of alternative fuels. They rely on the development of low-carbon cement. And also they rely, finally, on circular economy, including the recycling of building materials. However, realistically speaking, even in the most aggressive net zero scenario across, you don't really stop using hydrocarbons tomorrow. If we start saying that we won't do anything there, then we're walking away from a really big challenge. To us, the EBRD, the question becomes, how much can we reduce? What is achievable and commercially viable? And what can we do as EBRD to support those objectives? First and foremost, for us, deploying proper policy, as we've heard the need loud and clear this morning, across our countries, and adequate financial means, obviously, is necessary, and it becomes our duty to tackle the global challenges. We believe that a comprehensive framework needs to be developed, and this will be a joint endeavor between the industry makers, the policy makers, the governments, and the financiers. For examples, I'm happy to walk you through a few examples that we've done supporting this idea, but recently in Kazakhstan and in Egypt as well, we've involved several ministries and agencies and analyzed the current economic and policy framework for low-carbon development of the national cement sector. And the challenges that were identified and faced were shared with all the different stakeholders towards really a roadmap for improving energy and emissions performance. In response to these recommendations, I think this one is stuck. In response to these recommendations, the EBRD, and having identified those barriers, the bank has started its direct response to these barriers and to support the private sector to deliver decarbonization, either through financing or further support for policy dialogue. As EBRD, our commitment is not just to reduce the green gas emissions, but we need to boost economic development as well. Let me walk you through a few practical examples which I find quite relevant to this discussion today. We know that different technologies can improve energy efficiency and reduce CO2 emissions in the cement industry, and they are already available. I think their deployment will be more effective and more quick when such technologies are economically attractive. The way we operate as EBRD is that we have a wide range of instruments and investment tools that are available and structures to provide the necessary motivation and incentives for company to shift to those low-carbon pathways. Those can include grants. They are provided for R&D support, for installation of new technologies, for launching of new products, etc. Similarly, we did launch very recently, I think a year ago or something, what we call the high impact loan. This is really a structure, a loan structure, where the interest rate of the loan is linked to the achievement of climate outcomes, the milestones as we call them. And it involves both technological changes, but also, and as equally important, the improvements on the corporate governance and corporate climate governance. The high impact loan model is now available in a few of our countries, including Egypt, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Tunisia, Turkey, and Ukraine. What is it exactly and how it is structured? The interest rate of the loan is really coupled with some climate outcomes of the investment that have been agreed, and a discount on the interest rate will be realized upon achieving those pre-agreed and covenanted milestones in specific climate impact areas of high relevance to the specific sector. Up to 3 milestones and interest rate discounts can be set per project, and the discount structured by milestone will reflect obviously the CapEx program, and secondly, the corporate climate governance improvement. The discount will apply to donor-funded tranche of the loan, which can go up to 30% of the project cost. To date, this high-impact loan has been well received by corporates, which have noted that participation in this particular structure has helped them shape internal CCG discussions and accelerate their own alignment with a low-carbon future. So that would be an example of how we concretely are able to finance new technologies and here I wanted to add a couple of examples of the EBRD, not on the financing side this time, but rather on the policy dialogue side. We've been listening and hearing a lot about the LC3, and as EBRD, we obviously do support it. And because we understand the challenges that are encountered from the government side and from the different stakeholders, we try to push in Egypt in particular, and this is a follow-up to the initial roadmap and to the initial low-carbon roadmap that we have done in 2016. We have done this support. We are currently supporting the feasibility study of LC3 cement for Egypt, with the objectives of paving the way for it to be adopted in Egypt by all the stakeholders, including the government, etc. So these are concretely ways in which we believe that policy dialogue is important, stakeholder engagement is important, intervention with the government is important, adopting the right roadmap is important. And as a conclusion, and from our side, if we look at the green side, and as climate finance leader, we support the idea of generating scalable investments that increase returns, while as well providing the funds needed for this green transition. Our approach is not just do no harm, but rather it is taking positive and active steps towards advancing things in the right trajectory. I think that's, thank you.
Do come and join me for 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you very much. What I wonder, and thank you for that, Yousra, do you recognize the kind of vice, the kind of cleft stick that the cement industry now finds itself in?
Absolutely.
With the climate imperative and the liquidity, everything we heard from Anand this morning, and it getting worse. So how does the EBRD position itself? Are you actively persuading cement companies and cement interests to do things in a different way? Otherwise, there's no chance of them getting any money. Stop.
I think that's a fair message to say. Less aggressive in the way we say it.
I don't work for the EBRD though.
but definitely it's not about the carrot or the stick really in terms of how we perceive it. It's not if you don't do this you're not going to get that. It's really if you would like to get there, we have the means and the tools, and we will provide you with the right type of incentives and the right type of expertise, of knowledge, of funding as well, for you to get there, because there is no other way. There is no other way but to start adopting a low-carbon pathway for the players, for the governments, and for all the stakeholders involved.
And what kind of speed can you do that at?
The kind of speed, I think, as I said, it is very depending on the national circumstances for each and every country. It is depending on what is the starting point. It is going to be different from one country to the other. It would be unfair to apply the same kind of benchmark for all. And this is how we approach the industry, and this is exactly how we approach it. And that's why in each and every country where we operate, we start with a baseline to understand where we are, and we will then be presenting realistic recommendations, really, to reach the low-carbon pathway that we want through either an aggressive scenario, a moderate scenario, or maybe...
Because we could have had this discussion a year ago, but now the economic conditions, the international economic conditions are dire in so many ways, as we're seeing. And therefore there is a far greater urgency, not just because of February the 24th, but because of inflation, and we're seeing what's happening in the construction industry and so on. And therefore, I think what I'm asking you, I hope I'm doing it in a diplomatic way, is does the EBRD recognize the need for greater urgency, given the pressures that are now being faced by many of the companies represented in this room?
Absolutely. No, we've always been... rather than lagging, we've always been leading in the way we address crisis and in the way we address the needs that are erupting and the challenges that are changing and ever changing, obviously. However, we have a commitment. We have a commitment to that we are Paris aligned, and our objective is to be fully green, or at least 50% green by in the coming 2 years. And this poses a challenge on us, actually, to be able to play the right role, either on the policy side to convince everyone to come together, or on the funding side where we would like to find the right projects for us to invest. So it is a pressure on us, but we are as well still committed to the green transition that we so believe in.
And far more broadly, not just about the region, but your President Odile and what she would be saying in this situation, with everyone talking about net zero by 2050, by 2060, but actually the significant reductions have got to be made in the next 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely.
Where do you think we are on that? Because there is a view which is that we're not just in the cement sector, but everyone is just simply not realizing the enormity and the urgency of the challenge.
Absolutely. No, I think that is an understanding that we all share, particularly with the new challenges that erupted on the energy sector and the energy side this year. I think putting us a little bit even further behind than the ambitions that we had maybe a year or so ago. It does not mean that we will stop. It does not mean that we will not be doing anything there. We still need to move the needle, and we still need to do what we need to do.
All right. Well, look, I'm sorry I'm going to bring this to an end. We're running a little late, but thank you so much
Thank you very much.
for coming and joining us and giving us that perspective. Yousra El Said from the EBRD. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me invite Nasser Ayoub, please, up onto the platform. Nasser, are you here? Great. I think you're heading in this direction with the microphone on, because what we want to do finally before lunch, and we're running about 20 minutes late, so bear with us, how to baseline in a way that, come and join me up on the platform, please, for customers, bringing together what we've heard this morning, Nasser. Now, do you want to stand here, or do you want to sit here?
Yeah, please.
All right.
First, yeah.
And then we will have lunch.
Okay, yeah, I will make it very short. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for staying that late, and thank you for this WCA and AQ Banco. In fact, since the morning, I'm listening to the very interesting interventions and talks, and I try to to link what I'm going to say with what have been said during these 3 hours. So first, we spoke about the race to zero and the target of 1.5 degrees, and the embodied carbon. Emily was speaking about the embodied carbon, and Rafael. So what is embodied carbon and why it is important to calculate it? For example, Mahendra said we have about 16% of reduction for transportation, which is embodied carbon. Also, somebody spoke about the RDF, and it may be harmful to environment. So we need to assess this one. So this is also related to the environmental product declaration. And the main topic is the decarbonization roadmap. So the roadmap is mainly to reduce based on a baseline. So, and that's exactly what we would like to do. We need to reduce, but to reduce according to what? So according to internal benchmark or to external benchmark. So normally what I have so far is basically we have reductions 50, 20, 30% operational and with internal benchmark. But what about international benchmark? So this is EPD. This is what is EPD about. So this is other way around. I'm sorry. So as I said, I'm talking about embodied carbon, environmental product declaration, and how to use it to set the life cycle stages baseline. So as have been said, 70% of global CO2 emissions comes from cities. 39 of them is from carbon emissions from construction sector. 28% from operational, and 11% from embodied carbon. So what is embodied carbon? Embodied carbon is everything before and after your company. So it is transportation, it is extraction of raw materials, it is the installation and deconstruction of the building. So it is the whole life cycle, the whole supply chain of thing, excluding your company, which is operational emissions. So yeah, as Rafael said, it is cement have around from 5 to 8, so 7. And it's easy always to calculate for operational companies, operational emissions, because it is related to energy, it is related to your operation, which you control. But always the problem is with embodied carbon, because it is out of your hand. And this is where EPD came in the picture. So if we keep growing the same way, only taking care of operational emissions and ignoring the embodied carbon, in 2050, we will have they will be almost the same, because we will reduce operational and still the embodied carbon is increasing. So what we can manage only what we measure. So to measure, we need to have two things. So far, we have carbon footprint, greenhouse gas protocol, ISO 14067, and that's it. So, but for now, we need to have the embodied carbon, which is life cycle assessment, to assessing your product, your production from cradle to grave. So what is environmental product declaration? It is a kind of a report, to verified report actually, based on a study called life cycle assessment. I'm not gonna speak about what is life cycle assessment, but it is basically what I have said. It is assessing your product from cradle to grave. So, so finally, you get something like that. This is this document, and with this document, we have some explanation of what is your process. So to benchmark with somebody who is like you, who is producing the same way you are producing. Then you can internationally benchmark. We have different environmental impacts. So it is not only the CO2. It is all other emissions, human toxicity, eutrophication, acidification, all the other impacts that your product impact from cradle to grave. So this analogy is really nice. We are talking about decarbonization. So when I make diet, so I watch for my calories and try to reduce the calories that I'm eating so that I can reduce. The same way for environmental product declaration. We calculate all the emission related to your 1 ton of cement. So basically, we have this is our benchmark. If I want to reduce by 10%, 20% per ton. So actually also, one thing typically for GCC region and MENA region is water. So normally, we only speak about CO2 emissions, which we don't make much. But water is one issue that we need to consider, and that's considered in EPD. So what baseline is done, how baseline is done, it's basically we calculate the life cycle of the product in these 4 stages. So for example, if we are talking about the first stage is A1, A2, A3. What are these? Raw material extraction, transportation, manufacturing of the product. So how to calculate this? This is done through databases and a process that environmental consultants knows and bring to. Also, we calculate for transportation to the client and installation and assembly. For cement industry, the use phase is not calculated, so we only work for the deconstruction phase. So we calculate the deconstruction, the recycling. If we are retreating or reusing the demolition waste, how much CO2 is captured, what embodied carbon saved from the recycling product. So finally, this is how things are done. A few days ago, we have the science-based target study, the guidance, so how to do a race to zero. So race to zero only for cement industry based on the EPD. So it says that those who develop the science-based target should be followed the calculation of cradle to gate emissions. They recommended also the EPD tool, that because it is considering the whole life cycle. So basically, what we have so far is operational, but we should take a look about our embodied carbon. So I would just want to answer a question that wasn't asked to me, which is it mandatory to go for decarbonization Should we have it? We have to do this? Yes, actually, definitely. It is not an option. It is mandatory. 1 year ago, we didn't have any EPDs registered in our company. Nowadays, we have lots of calls to register. Why? Because several countries now, including, of course, the LEED, if there is a green building and the green LEED rating system is applied, people should submit an EPD. So now the trend is going up. Also, England, France, and Germany, for now, our clients or the clients of the consultants are asking for EPD. So it is coming, and we should go for it. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have an urgent question you'd like to ask before? Please, can we get the microphone here? We won't hold you up from lunch for too long, but that's important.
Then let's go to lunch directly.
Let's hear your question.
Okay, so Osama Abdelbari from CEMEX, UAE. My question is for APD. It's an amazing benchmarking tool to measure carbon dioxide emission for products that's been in the market and for other aspects as well. Two questions or two aspects that I want you to explain more about the processing timeline for an EPD certificate. That's one of the challenges that we face in the market. And
you are talking about the process of issuing an EPD, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And the second point about is there any way that the cost of APD certificate can be also, I would say, affordable to organizations, just to make it as simple and simpler process and quicker process?
Okay, so I really not sure about the second question, but I will answer the first one. Actually, the challenge for making EPD takes from 3 to 6 months to develop as a consultant. The issue is always in the data. It is not also the data outside your gate. It is always a problem for gate-to-gate data, because people do not like to share because of different reasons. So if the data are there, we are talking about from 3 to 4 months, and it can be done. So the consultants normally do it in 4 months. But sometimes it takes more than 1.5 years. Just because, we do a mass balance and energy balance, and sometimes people try to tweak data. So if somebody does that, then we find it in our assessment, and then we come back, and the process take longer time. So for the second question, can you please repeat, because I didn't.
No, my second one was about the affordability of the certificate itself. Let alone the cost and time, because most of the projects requirements are coming with EPD requirements that can make organizations lose the opportunity to present the EPD for a specific product.
Got it. So the process is really easy. First, you will do a life cycle assessment and have a confidential background report for life cycle assessment. This is done by a consultant, and issue an EPD based on this life cycle assessment, which you show to the public, because LCA is a sensitive data thing. So you share all the inputs of your materials and energy and so on. So you don't need to share this one. Once you have done this, there is international verification. This takes like 1-2 months to assure that it is based on the EN 15084 and ISO 14025. I mean, to get it according to the standards. And then once approved, it takes like 2-3 days to go out in public.
So what you're saying is you are always on the watch for data being exaggerated or not as accurate as it should be. Have you had many cases?
I had, of course. I had.
Too many?
Yeah, not too many, but especially in cement industry, yes. because yeah, people always think that they are doing bad. But if we compare it with PVC, for example, we have like our average is from 400 for the masonry and 1,200. But for PVC, it is 2,200 ton CO2 per ton. So we are, but because it is abundant, so it is accused for this one. So basically, people try to make themselves nice and provide some data to make things better. But because of life cycle assessment we have energy balance, we have mass balance, we have verification. So we have three defense lines that bring it finally to be approved.
So be warned, you're being watched.
Yeah.
And finally, you use the word mandatory. Do you really mean mandatory?
It is mandatory for lead. If you want to sell your product for lead project, it is mandatory.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to adjourn this now because you all deserve lunch. You've been incredibly devoted to sitting in here. You've got amazing stamina. We've been in here 4 hours, apart from a brief break. So thank you very much
so
indeed.
Yeah,
Others will talk to you
Yeah.
over lunch. Thank you.
You.